So out here in a place called Buddha Caves. So these caves over here have been used for more than thousands of years. And apparently, as the story goes, they have been used by Buddhists or maybe even the Buddha himself. You can see these crazy trees over here, some Bodhi trees as well. And there's a really it's like hard to explain. It's ineffable, just the vibe that I feel over here. But what I want to talk to you about in this video, just I've been inspired to share this with you right now, is that of the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, right? I'm here out in Buddha Caves. I can feel the vibe, I can feel the energy, and I want to share with you what the Buddha shared in the Dhammapada, right? The Dhammapada is the Buddha's work. It means the path of Dharma, and Dharma means walking the path of your authentic purpose in your life, right? So the first noble truth of Buddhism is that life is Duha. This is commonly translated as life is suffering, but Duha in Sanskrit literally means axle, right? So imagine that you are this car, you are this supercar, you have all of this potential horsepower, but when you have Duha, when you have an axle stuck within your wheel, then it becomes impossible for you to express what you are truly capable of. And when we don't express who we really are, then that creates a space for regret, disillusionment, anxiety, and depression to seep in, right? So the first noble truth of Buddhism is that life is dukkha, right? What we are all after is sukha. What we are all after is pleasantness and joyfulness. But sometimes an axle gets stuck within the wheel, and that causes us to suffer, right? So what is the cause of suffering? The cause of suffering is that of selfish desire. Okay, when we think that there's something to get from outside of us, when we think that we want to do something because we'll be able to gain something else, then the reality is that you're tricking yourself into that cycle of thinking that you're not enough. When you think you're not enough, you are reinforcing that cycle with trying to get something from outside of you. And selfish desire, like the Buddha talks about, is insatiable. It's a fire that the more you actually fuel on it, the more you fuel with your own selfish desire and those decisions that are taken through the lens of trying to get something, the more that fire burns, right? The more the fire of selfish desire burns, the more you chase it, right? So that is the cause of suffering. When we think that we are wanting to move our lives, we want to move in our lives towards a certain direction, we want to have certain expectations, but when those expectations get in the way of how things are actually playing out, then we are basically associating our selfish desire with what we want rather than how things are. So there's a disconnect between how things are and how we want them to be. And then this creates suffering. Okay? Now, the third noble truth of Buddhism is that of the Buddha said that if there is a cause for suffering, then there is also something to which we can put an end to suffering, right? So just because there is all of this, we're here in this material existence, there are certain tendencies that we have, there are certain biological capacities that we have that make us slip down the slippery slope towards experiencing that unnecessary suffering. But the solution comes in the fourth noble truth of Buddhism, which is the Eightfold Path. Okay, the Eightfold Path is what the Buddha has laid out for us. It's the middle path so that we can walk it, so that we can integrate it and go on and come out of it the other side as more capable versions of ourselves, as versions of ourselves that are not going through that unnecessary suffering because we are walking our path and our purpose in our life, right? So it's characterized by these the Eightfold Path, right? So the first step of the Eightfold Path is right understanding, okay? Cultivating that right understanding means seeing things for what they really are, right? Not seeing things for how we want them to be or how our selfish desire wants them to be or how our ego has tricked us into thinking that they are. It is about seeing reality for what it really is, having that objective view of reality, which cannot be explained in words as much as our own experience of the way that things really are. Now, the second step of the Eightfold Path is that of right purpose, right? So the purpose of karma, which is something that we all know of, right? Karma comes into our lives to teach us the lesson, to be an educative force in our lives, to teach us that we are not walking the path of dharma right now. We're not walking our authentic path and our purpose in our life, right? So walking that right purpose, I believe we all have the same purpose in our lives, and that is to become who we really are, to close the gap between who we are and who we are capable of being. right? And the more we can actually live that purpose, of course, the mission through which we fulfill this purpose will be different for everyone. The way that we cultivate our greatest gifts and greatest service to the world will be different for each and every one of us. But at the end of the day, it's about giving what we have to give, right? Because when we carry the unfulfilled potential within us with the burden of a life unlived, then only then do we experience the unnecessary suffering. Okay. Now, the third step of the Eightfold Path is right speech, right? Because our words are very, very powerful. And when we don't have an awareness of them, when we use them without actually thinking about them, and they're out of alignment with what our higher self wants, or what we are here to do, then our words become disempowering, right? So the purpose of this step is really to get an awareness always of our speech, of the way that we use our words. And we shouldn't speak of something that which we don't want to come into existence, right? Now, the fourth step of the Eightfold Path is that of right conduct, right? Conducting yourself in a way that is in alignment with the Dharma, right? Your thoughts, your words, your behaviors, are they in alignment with this higher aspect of yourself that you've already deemed yourself as capable of moving towards, right? Once you make a decision, once you set out your values, then it's about conducting yourself in alignment with those values, right? Because talking about these values, speaking about them, writing about them, that's all great. But at the end of the day, if you aren't living them, if you aren't being them, if you aren't bringing them into fruition, then it's all for nothing. Okay, it all comes down to our behaviors, our actions, and how we conduct ourselves, right? And how we conduct ourselves is going towards the next step of the Eightfold Path, which is right occupation. Okay. Now, again, these are all Sanskrit words which have many different translations in English, but I'm just translating them based on the book that I read. But of course, it can, like, right occupation can be right vocation, it can be right, just the right application of the way that you spend your time, right? How do you spend your time? If you say that something is important to you, but then your behavior is not reflective to that. So this ties in back to right conduct, right? Because right occupation means that you are actually occupying your time and energy and focus and work towards your dharma, towards what is your most, the highest leverage point for you to actually cultivate your greatest gifts and greatest service to the world. Are you doing what you are truly here to do, right? Now, after right occupation, it is about right effort, right? You have to put in the effort, you have to put in the energy towards what it is that you seek to create, right? Because without effort, then it's like you're not putting in the work in. No one said this is going to be easy, right? You have to put in the effort. You have to be willing to actually go through the hard stuff, right? Sacrifice what it is that that is not in alignment with what you want, right? Because when you don't make sacrifices for what you want becomes a sacrifice. So making those sacrifices and knowing that part of getting what you want in life comes in knowing what you have to give up in order to get it, right? And then after flowing from right effort flows right attention, right? Your attention is your most valuable asset. Where do you put your attention? Do you allow anything and everything to just come and seep into your mind and, like, contaminate your software? Or do you actually keep the temple of your mind guarded against anything that's negative, anything that doesn't serve you, anything that doesn't actually move you towards where you want to go, right? We have to be very aware of what we allow into our minds, and whether it's serving us or not will determine whether we actually live into our values or not, right? And then at the end, the eighth step of the Eightfold Path is that of right meditation, right? Meditation means so many things to so many different people, but at the end of the day, it's about focusing the mind, right? Putting in the effort towards mastering your mind. When you're sitting there, when your mind tells you want to go, when your body tells you you're hungry, when all of these triggers, these biological triggers are coming up, but you are meditating, you are in the moment, you are practicing your focus, and you're able to do what needs to be done, even though your mind and your body are telling you something else, then you are literally solidifying your own identity as the master of your senses, the master of your mind, the master of your body, the master of your emotions, because you do the right thing rather than what your biological impulses are telling you to do. Okay, you take the seat of the power that you have to choose how you want to express your behavior, right? So that is a quick look at the Buddhism, my interpretation of Buddhism. I've been reading, like I said, a lot of these ancient Eastern texts, and I believe that they are something that is way more applicable now than they've ever been before, especially during the time that we're living in right now. These are the practices which we can really use and implement in our lives to become more stronger, more capable, more grounded, right? More present versions of ourselves, so that we can be and show up as the best version of ourselves for not only ourselves, right? Not only having self-respect for ourselves, right? At the end of the day, you can't respect anyone if you don't respect yourself. And if you respect yourself, you will respect everyone else as well. Okay, so I hope that you got value from this video, just out here in Buddha caves, and I will see you in the next video.